Now, my wife and I prepare for a new administration and for a new baby. Thank you.
If the Kennedys are America's royal family, then John F. Kennedy Jr. was their crowned prince, a legacy sealed by his untimely death.
One of the great symbols of that period is the moment when John gave his salute to his father's coffin.
He suddenly, if he hadn't already been, became America's child, and they were going to watch him grow up and consider him one of their own.
He lived with people's expectations of him, and he really fought to live his own life.
I mean, he was conscious he was always under the microscope. I think he was comfortable with that.
I don't think that I've seen as many of you in one place since they announced the results of my first bar exam, so it's nice to see you all again.
I don't think it's any accident that Carolyn Bessette was very much like Jackie in some ways. She was this vibrant, lively, beautiful girl, and after she married John, the publicity changed her completely.
At the time that he told me he was going to get serious about getting a license, I said, yeah, great, welcome to the club.
Navy divers are now zeroing in on what they believe could be the downplane of John F. Kennedy Jr.
I wish like hell that I'd said goodbye to him that day, because then it turns out you never get the chance to say goodbye.
The dream of being one of for life's ambition was to be a star. Never recover from the public scandal.
At 8 o'clock on the night of Friday, July 16th, 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr., along with his wife, Carolyn, and sister-in-law, Lauren Bessette, arrived at Essex County Airport in Fairfield, New Jersey. Moments later, they climbed aboard John's Piper Saratoga airplane. Kennedy was flying Lauren to Martha's Vineyard, a 1 hour and 15-minute flight. After dropping her off, John and Carolyn planned to continue on to nearby Hyannisport and hoped to arrive no later than 10 p.m. They planned to attend a family wedding the following day. 38-year-old Kennedy, a novice pilot, was at the controls of the single-engine aircraft. At 8:38, as the plane took off, clear summer weather gave way to hazy skies, less than ideal flying conditions. An hour earlier, Kyle Bailey canceled plans to fly to Martha's Vineyard because of the weather.
That particular night was such an eerie night. I mean, the visibility was terrible. It was kind of like the calm before a thunderstorm. And I assumed, based on those conditions, that there was an instructor on the airplane with him.
Kennedy, who had a cast removed from his left ankle only the day before, decided to fly solo. At 9:33, 55 minutes after takeoff, a thickening haze shrouded the aircraft as John headed out over the Atlantic Ocean toward the Vineyard. The horizon that guided his way was no longer in sight. The plane failed to arrive at Martha's Vineyard Airport. Friends of Lauren Bessette, who were waiting to meet her flight, alerted an airport maintenance worker at 10:05 and went home. No one was overly concerned, at least not yet. At 1:55 the following morning, the Coast Guard station in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, received a worried phone call from Kennedy family friend Carol Radziwill. Radziwill told the Coast Guard that John's plane never arrived at Hyannisport. Coast Guard officials swung into action, sending several cutters out to sea. Shortly after sunrise, as word began to spread, the world watched and waited for news of the missing aircraft.
There is tonight an overwhelming feeling that this could not be happening.
Each one of these cases is different, and I can tell you miraculous stories about people surviving.
Hoping against odds, hoping against the evidence that searchers would find some sign of life. Of course, as such at this point, that has not yet happened.
Maybe he's still alive. Maybe it'll be a miracle. We don't know right now.
The outpouring of emotion was widespread, just as it had been 36 years earlier following the assassination of John's father, President John F. Kennedy. The tiny boy who saluted his father's flag-draped coffin captured the hearts of stunned and bereaved Americans. He became their son as well. Howard Chua Eowan chronicled John's amazing life story for the readers of Time magazine.
They were hoping that one day this would be the next great Kennedy. And of course, that's part of the entire tragedy, that there was all this hope that the prince and the heir of Camelot would one day come and take his rightful place. And that did not happen. It will never happen.
In November 1960, 3 years before the assassination, Jack Kennedy and his very pregnant wife Jackie were basking in victory. 2 weeks after he was elected president, Jack planned to fly to the family compound in Palm Beach, Florida, to finalize his cabinet choices. Jackie's half-brother, Jamie Auchincloss, warned Kennedy not to leave Washington.
I said, you shouldn't go to Palm Beach after dinner tonight. He was planning to fly down and have Thanksgiving Day with his parents. And he said, why not? And I said, because Jackie's going to have a baby boy. And he laughed and he said, well, she's not expecting until December 11th.
Jamie's prediction was right. Shortly after Kennedy arrived in Palm Beach, Jackie was rushed to Georgetown University Hospital. A frantic Jack was flying back when his wife underwent an emergency cesarean section. John F. Kennedy, Jr. was born at 12:22 a.m. on November 25th. He was the only son ever born to a president-elect.
How is your wife, sir?
She's very well. She's fine.
And the baby?
Very good indeed. We're very grateful for them both being so well.
John Jr. weighed a healthy 6 pounds 3 ounces, but he spent his first 6 days in an incubator because of respiratory problems. When his condition improved, John was baptized at the hospital in the same christening dress worn by his father. The press turned out en masse for the ceremony. Noted biographer Christopher Anderson has written 3 books on the Kennedy family, including The Day John Died.
I can't think of a single American in this century who lived out his entire life in the spotlight. All 38 years, this guy was center stage. And I think that's why people in this country came to view him as sort of a member of the family.
43-year-old Jack Kennedy, a 2-term senator from Massachusetts, was the youngest president ever elected. His wife, 31-year-old Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, a former New York debutante, was the youngest First Lady. The dashingly handsome couple represented a new golden period in America, later referred to as Camelot.
The Kennedys are the closest we've come to royalty. I don't think any other family has had an impact, in this century certainly, on Americans.
John Jr. and his 3-year-old sister Caroline were conspicuously missing when their father was sworn in as the 35th President of the United States on January 21st, 1961.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
John and Caroline stayed at home with their nanny. Jackie, who grew up with an alcoholic father, was determined to give her kids as normal a childhood as possible, even in the White House.
Her most famous quote is, if you blow raising your children, no matter how much you succeed in everything else, you've blown everything. So she put that as priority number 1.
Inside 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Jackie had Caroline's bedroom painted pink and white, and she created a special nursery for John. Boxes of toys were brought in. A menagerie of animals, including guinea pigs, ducks, and rabbits, were also kept on the grounds. Outsiders were warned to keep a proper distance from John Jr. and Caroline.
Jackie, even when they were in the White House, made certain that the Secret Service knew, for example, that they were not to pamper these kids, that she didn't want grown men picking up after her children. There was one memo that I thought was fascinating. In it, Jackie says, you know, when we're at the beach, drowning is my responsibility. Don't worry, I'll take care of them.
Jackie was adamant about protecting her children and their privacy, but she also recognized the public's immense interest in her family. On a few special occasions, the First Lady allowed pictures and home movies to be taken. Americans saw John ride his first pony and spend time with his father on the beach in Hyannisport. John Jr., like his dad, craved adventure.
He didn't have any real sense of danger. He would run off the high diving board when he was 1.5 years and 2.5 years old in the summers and hurl himself into the air and plummet into the water, and Jack would delight at that.
John's sense of adventure wasn't limited to the diving board.
When he was a little kid, he used to, run out to see Dad land on the White House lawn in a helicopter. As a matter of fact, Dad would kneel down to embrace his son, and little John would run right past Dad toward the helicopter. I mean, he always had this love of flying.
Jack Kennedy may have been the President of the United States and one of the most powerful men in the world, but the 45-year-old leader was also a doting father. He routinely started his day by sharing breakfast alone with John Jr. and Caroline. John often followed his dad into high-level meetings. On one memorable occasion, he disrupted his father's weekly radio address.
And its complex problems need the kind of attention. Wait a minute, John, wait a sec. Don't say anything, because I got to give this speech. Can you sit down over there now and be a good boy?
John.
Come on now, be a good boy. John.
Jack was so charmed by his outgoing son that, unlike his wife, he wanted to share him with everyone. In December 1962, while Jackie was visiting Greece, Kennedy summoned a photographer friend to the White House. Stanley Tredick from Look magazine was asked to take pictures of John playing in the Oval Office. The result was a series of priceless photos, including a famous shot of John crawling inside his father's desk.
There are wonderful pictures of John in the Oval Office, and those were on moments when she was out of town and they were snuck in, and then Jack would have to probably give her some pretty nice gifts to calm her down.
Even though Jack and Jackie didn't always agree on the amount of publicity their children received, they were overjoyed when Jackie found out that she was pregnant again in the spring of 1963. The close bond Jackie forged with John Jr. and Caroline would help carry them through the most unimaginable events. Coming up on the E! True Hollywood Story, a touching goodbye.
He stepped forward and put his feet together, and he came up with his right hand. Those of us who knew of John's left-handedness really broke us up.
And later, the little boy grows up.
Over a quarter century ago, my father stood before you to accept the nomination for the presidency of the United States.
In 1963, 2-year-old John F. Kennedy Jr. and his sister Caroline excitedly awaited the arrival of their new sibling. That August, Jackie was rushed to the hospital and underwent her second emergency cesarean.
The dramatic miracle of birth and a fight for life takes place at the Otis Air Force Base Hospital on Cape Cod as Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy bears a premature son who has been baptized Patrick Bouvier. The president rushed from Washington to be with his wife. As is often the case with premature babies, Patrick had difficulty breathing, and he was whisked to Children's Hospital and placed in an isolette, an oxygen-fed incubator. The baby, the first to be born to a White House family in 68 years, was the object of worldwide attention during his dramatic fight for life.
Patrick Bouvier Kennedy died on August 9, 1963, 2 days after he was born. Jackie, physically weak and depressed, did not attend the funeral.
The casket looks tiny, and that's a very poignant sight. It was a white casket. And Jack was really emotionally crushed by that. He so looked forward to actually having a son born in the White House years.
When the First Lady emerged from seclusion 3 months later, in November 1963, she joined her husband in Dallas for a parade in his honor. Texas was a Republican outpost, and the liberal Kennedy braced for protests. In fact, the Secret Service was on high alert. At approximately 12:30 p.m. on November 22, 1963, the presidential motorcade drove past Dealey Plaza, greeted by cheers and waving flags. President Kennedy and his wife sat together in the back seat of a convertible limousine. Suddenly, shots rang out.
Something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. It appears as though someone in the limousine might have been hit by the gunfire.
President Kennedy was shot in the back of the neck and on the right side of his head. Doctors at Parkland Memorial Hospital worked feverishly to save him, but the damage was too extensive.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
Jackie accompanied her husband's body back to Washington, D.C. aboard Air Force One. Still wearing her blood-stained suit, Jackie stood beside Lyndon B. Johnson as he was sworn in as the 36th President of the United States.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed.
John Jr. and Caroline were unaware of their father's assassination when they were taken to their grandparents' home that afternoon.
All our TVs and radios had been unplugged so they wouldn't try to watch cartoons, because all of the stations would just have news of their father's death.
Jackie arrived at the White House too distraught to break the tragic news to her children. She left that task to their nanny, Maud Shaw. The following morning, the president's body lay in state at the Capitol building. John and Caroline were given a moment alone with their father.
Jackie asked Caroline to write a letter saying goodbye to her daddy, and for John to draw a picture. And they opened the casket and they put it in the casket then. So the children saw their father. And then they closed it.
For the first time, Jackie contemplated life without Jack. She shared her feelings with President Kennedy's press secretary, Pierre Salinger.
This is something that I think is maybe one of the most important things that I've ever heard, because she said to me, look, Pierre, I've only got one thing to do now in life. I've got to take care of these kids. I've got to make sure that they get up well. I've got to make sure that they become intelligent, that they move forward in life, that they get good jobs. Because if I don't do that for them, they'll spend their whole life looking back at the father's death, and I want them to have a real future.
On November 25th, 3 days after his assassination, President Kennedy was laid to rest. As his father's coffin was being wheeled to Arlington National Cemetery, John Jr. made a simple gesture, a gesture that was forever sealed into the hearts and minds of fellow Americans.
One of the great symbols of that period, maybe the greatest, is the moment when John gave his salute to his father's coffin.
He stepped forward and put his feet together, and he came up with his right hand, which, for those of us who knew of John's left-handedness, really broke us up. You know, that it was a truly poignant moment of, I'm going to get it right this time, because this is when it counts. This is that one take.
He delivered this, what is, I think, the most famous salute in history. And it's part of the iconography of this country and the 20th century.
President Kennedy's funeral fell on the same day as John's 3rd birthday. That evening, still wearing her black dress, Jackie threw her son a party. Jackie's cousin, John Davis, never forgot the brave facade the guests displayed.
The somber mood of the day and the somber mood of the reception in the White House was dissipated entirely into a children's party with people tooting horns and singing happy birthday to you to John Jr. It was an amazing thing to watch.
Jackie and her children took up temporary residence in a 2-story brick house on N Street in Washington. Curiosity seekers camped outside the house day and night. Police were forced to erect barricades and put up roadblocks. Edward Klein later formed a friendship with Jackie and authored the book Just Jackie, Her Private Years.
It became apparent to her that as long as she stayed in Washington, she would be treated solely as the widow of the slain president. And as such, she would be a captive, really, of the public imagination. So she decided to move to New York, where there was a lot more chance for anonymity.
In 1964, Jackie bought a 15-room apartment at 1040 Fifth Avenue on Manhattan's Tony Upper East Side. Soon after Jackie and the kids settled in their new home, 4-year-old John Jr. started kindergarten at St. David's, a Catholic school 2 blocks away. On his first day, John was accompanied by Secret Service agents who would protect him until he turned 16. Mark Raphael was one of John's classmates.
I actually was in grade school with John, and we were always aware of, his presence. But I think there was also a respect of, allowing him this distance, and so it was something very guarded at that age.
For the most part, John was a popular and well-liked student. But on occasion, he was treated like an outsider. Jackie witnessed some of the acts of unkindness.
As they left the school, this gang of kids, his classmates, came up and said, "Your daddy's dead, your father's dead," and over again, chanting this. And Jackie was horrified, and John reaches up and takes her hand and then just kind of leads her down the street. And she later on said, here is this boy who had the presence of mind to think, what my feelings were like, trying to protect me. So I think he was always in that special position. Ultimately, of course, he won everybody over, even as a child in school.
Jackie was proud of John, but she felt that he needed a strong male influence in his life. She turned to Jack's younger brother, Bobby, for help.
Bobby, who was the next oldest Kennedy brother, and therefore assumed immediately the role of the head of the family, felt an obligation to take care of Jackie and her children, which he did. He spent a lot of time with her children.
In 1968, when John Jr. was 7 years old, Bobby Kennedy decided to run for president.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
That June, moments after he won the California primary, Bobby was brutally gunned down following his victory speech at a Los Angeles hotel.
Mrs. Ethel Kennedy is coming in now. The senator is lying with his eyes closed, absolutely unmoving, blood underneath his head.
Bobby Kennedy died the following day, June 6, 1968. He was 42.
When she heard that her brother-in-law had been assassinated, only, 5 years after her husband had been assassinated, she was absolutely certain that there was no safety for any Kennedy, including especially herself and her children. And she said, as has been well reported, if they're killing Kennedys, they're going to kill my children, and I want to get out of this country.
Coming up, a billionaire comes to the rescue.
He basically tried to buy them off. He'd take them to FAO Schwarz, just buy out the store.
And later, the pressures of celebrity.
I think the greatest weakness of their marriage was external.
At an age when most young boys stressed over their baseball card collection and arithmetic homework, John F. Kennedy Jr. suffered through the horrific deaths of his father and beloved uncle, Bobby. Although John was just 3 years old when his father was assassinated, he was 7 and well aware of the grim circumstances when Bobby Kennedy was killed in 1968.
I've looked at a lot of pictures of Bobby carrying John over his shoulder, and John laughing delightedly, and so you can see from the photographs that it was a wonderful, close relationship.
He was a devoted substitute father to those 2 children, and he was a great source of strength to Jacqueline. And when he went, everything that sustained her was sort of knocked out from under her. She was in a terribly profound depression.
For John Jr., the trauma didn't end with Bobby's death. His mother, desperate for financial and emotional stability, was about to make a startling decision. In October 1968, 39-year-old Jackie Kennedy married Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis. The ceremony was held on his private island of Skorpios in the Mediterranean Sea. 62-year-old Onassis was regarded as the richest man in the world.
She married a man who had so much money and so much power. and a 75-man security force, I might add. That was part of it. He could provide the kind of security that she didn't really feel the Secret Service could provide her children.
Onassis met Jackie in the early 1960s when he briefly dated her sister, Lee Radziwill. Aristotle and Jackie maintained a friendship and saw each other on numerous occasions. Nevertheless, their wedding took everyone by surprise, particularly Jackie's family.
Onassis was older than my mother, and so my mother's looking at a daughter marrying somebody older than the mother just didn't look right. And all that money and all those business dealings, it just looked like terrible PR.
7-year-old John Jr. was especially upset. He barely knew Onassis, who was old enough to be his grandfather. Onassis had a grown son and daughter, Alexander and Christina, from a previous marriage. But Aristotle made a concerted effort to win the affection of his new stepchildren.
He basically tried to buy them off. He'd take them to FAO Schwartz, the toy store on Fifth Avenue in New York, and just buy out the store, you know. He did spend time with them, but they never got past that. John never got past calling him Mr. Onassis.
If John was going to say anything, it would be that he liked him and that he was a very generous man, whether he was or not, because he knew that anything other than that would make headlines. And there's some nice pictures of John with Ari, and again, if one believes pictures, it seemed all right.
Aristotle's money provided John Jr. with a lifestyle of supreme privilege. He spent his summers and holidays on Scorpios, as well as sailing around the world on Onassis's elegant yacht, the Christina. Jackie had the protection she craved for her children. But she also understood their need for some normalcy, so John and his sister continued to attend school in New York City. For the immensely private Jackie, living in New York City during the school year presented many dangers, including the prying eyes of the paparazzi. Photographers routinely camped outside John's school, and they followed him into Central Park, where he played with his friends. In 1969, photographer Ron Galella startled John when he jumped out from behind a bush to take his picture. When Jackie found out about the incident, she ordered Secret Service agents to smash Galella's camera and arrest him for harassment. Attorney Stuart Schlesinger represented Galella in the matter.
He frightened her son on a bicycle, and I think he fell off the bicycle. There was no touching or attacking or anything like that. He was brought to the police station by the Secret Service for harassing and interfering with Mrs. Onassis and the children.
Galella sued for false arrest and harassment, and Jackie filed a countersuit. A judge eventually ordered Galella not to come within 30 feet of John.
It's a constitutional right to freedom, to pursue freedom of speech, to pursue your trade. And the question here was, is it freedom to do anything you want? And the court said that freedom has boundaries.
The ruling was a victory, but Jackie knew that a court order alone wasn't going to protect her son.
What really bothered her, I think, the most was that he would not be resilient enough to survive, the kind of fame, the relentless glare of publicity that he was going to be subjected to.
To make sure John was resilient, Jackie arranged for a series of summer excursions designed to build character. In 1971, 10-year-old John sailed, canoed, and rock climbed on an island off the coast of Wales. In ensuing summers, he rebuilt earthquake-ravaged homes in Guatemala and participated in a 26-day survival course in Maine.
It was a good way to bring somebody up, to not teach them fear, to let them do as much as possible. And usually they're safer that way rather than less safe.
The challenging summer adventures prepared John to deal with yet another family crisis. In May 1975, Aristotle Onassis died in Paris from bronchial pneumonia. He was 69. At the time of his death, Aristotle was estranged from Jackie and her children. Onassis left very little of his vast estate to Jackie, so she contested the will. The bitter battle played out in newspapers around the world. Christina Onassis, who was the executor of the will, eventually settled with her stepmother for $26 million. When the legal wrangling ended, John was 15 years old. He had been through more turmoil than most adults. Not surprisingly, John became rebellious.
John was a handful. Jackie had a lot of trouble controlling him from a very early age. He also hated authority and was always getting into trouble. She would say that Caroline was very focused and John was very scattered. And she would say, "Oh, John, he's always getting into a jam."
In 1976, John was sent to boarding school at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. John took advantage of his newfound freedom by openly experimenting with alcohol and drugs. He was caught several times by Secret Service agents and school officials, but he was never suspended or expelled from school. Academically, John also had problems.
John had a difficult time reading and learning how to read and things like that, so there were remedial courses. I don't think he was ever a particularly good student.
John was a lousy student, there's no question about it. And I think if he were to be, I think today he would have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, to be honest with you, because he had all the classic symptoms. You know, he couldn't sit still, he couldn't concentrate. He apparently had a touch of dyslexia as well. He hated the fact that people thought he was dumb.
At boarding school, John flunked math and was forced to repeat the 11th grade. In the summer of 1978, before his senior year, John was sent to work on a ranch in Wyoming. Owner John Perry Barlow was instructed to instill lots of discipline in his new ranch hand.
He had a general problem with authority. He didn't particularly care for being told what to do. So, as a consequence, I think people came to the conclusion that he wasn't as bright as he was, but he had a more free-roaming kind of intelligence than was likely to be well-suited to any kind of structured environment.
Barlow took 17-year-old John under his wing, and the two formed a lasting friendship.
We had him doing all the stuff that people do on ranches, digging post holes, putting up fence, driving cows, irrigating, and he had boundless energy and needed to have something to focus it on. John was always tough enough for anything. He had kind of Kennedy testosterone and Bouvier sensitivity, which was a nice combination.
John settled down for his senior year and graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy in May 1979. Despite a less than stellar academic record, John was accepted to Harvard University, where both his father and sister graduated.
John wanted to avoid having to go to school in the shadow of his father at Harvard. Of course, it was expected that he again would enter Harvard, but at Brown he could escape that to some degree and be his own man.
It was a golden time at Brown. It was just right for him because it was kind of bohemian, but also intellectual and fairly wild and experimental, but not insane.
John entered Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island in the fall of 1979. The freewheeling lifestyle he adopted at boarding school continued in college. But John soon found a far more consuming passion than partying, one that caused his mother even greater concern.
He really wanted to go off and be an actor, and I think that he continued to entertain those thoughts all along. He never really got over the idea.
Coming up, rave reviews on a different stage.
Here was this person who had grown up, who was articulate. I mean, a lot of people hadn't heard him speak as an adult.
And later, John meets George.
John Kennedy did not hang out with journalists before starting George Magazine, and I think was anxious about the idea of being a celebrity and going to the office every day with a bunch of journalists.
In September 1979, John F. Kennedy Jr. was one of 1,300 freshmen who began classes at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. Unlike his fellow students, however, 18-year-old John had more to do on his first day than select his courses. He answered questions from dozens of reporters assigned to cover the historic event. Mark Raphael was also a freshman at Brown that year.
People knew that he would be there, and you wonder, gosh, I wonder if our paths will cross, you know. Because you can help but know that, you know, you'd be in his class.
As he had done at his previous schools, John worked hard to blend in. He drove a beat-up Honda Civic, played rugby in the quad, and wasn't afraid to show his sense of humor. John even joined a fraternity and had to swallow goldfish and streak across the campus naked as part of the initiation.
We joined this fraternity and we all rushed it together and all lived there for our sophomore year. We all go out, play football whenever. There's a bar in the basement, and we'd have big parties on the weekends. John's door was pretty much open all the time, so you could just, wander in.
John was accepted as one of the guys, but he couldn't completely shield his identity. America's favorite son developed into a strikingly handsome young adult, and a large flock of female admirers took notice.
Strange women would just sort of turn up on the doorstep of the frat, who had, traveled several days and several thousand miles to meet him.
As much time as I spent around him, that I would turn to him and see him at close range, and it would just take my breath away because he was perfect, physically. But he knew that, and he dealt with his vanity as he dealt with most things, by turning it into something ironic. I mean, his vanity became a joke.
The attention was flattering, but at times it was also overwhelming. John found an escape in Brown's theater department. James Barnhill was a popular professor.
I didn't know him until his sophomore year, and he came and said he wanted to take the basic acting course, and it was all right with me.
He enjoyed the notion of being in another pair of shoes. He loved that aspect of acting, the whole transformational, get under the hood and muck around and see what a character's about. He really had that kind of curiosity.
John made his college stage debut in the fall of 1980. He portrayed a professional soldier in the drama Volpone. Opening night drew widespread media interest, but the initial reviews were less than kind.
It was very difficult when he did theater because, he'd get national press to review him in a show, that would just be a show that we'd do at Brown. I mean, he was conscious he was always under the microscope.
John was undaunted. Over the remaining 2 years, he poured himself into acting and appeared in 4 more productions. Jackie attended several of her son's performances, but she discouraged John from pursuing acting beyond college.
She had a very fine-tuned sense of what was appropriate, and she didn't feel that being an actor was appropriate for him. And I think there was some strife between them on this.
I don't think anyone had to sit him down and say, this probably wouldn't work out. I think he was aware that logistically it would have been a nightmare.
There was no talk of an acting career when Jackie attended John's college graduation in June 1983. They were joined by hundreds of members of the press as John received his Bachelor of Arts degree in history. Following graduation, 23-year-old John returned to New York City to sort things out. His mother suggested law school, but John wanted to give acting another shot. He called theater director Robin Sachs, a former classmate from Brown, and begged her for a part.
He still had the yen for the stage, and he was asking me about what I was doing, and I was just about to go into rehearsals with a new play that I was directing, a one-act, at a theater called Manhattan Punchline. And he wanted to come in and audition. So he did. And it was wonderful. And he did a wonderful job. But in the end, we went with a different actor because he really was too young for the part.
Sachs was impressed with John's talent, and she eventually found him the perfect role. In 1984, Sachs cast John in a 2-person play titled Winners. The story featured a pair of Irish teenagers involved in a tragic love affair. Christina Haig, another Brown alumnus, was cast as the girl.
When you see an actor who's a real actor, you know it. They have this ability to almost channel characters through them. And John had that talent. He loved to get inside a character and figure out what made it tick, and especially somebody who was really removed from his life and his life experience.
The 90-minute play debuted in August 1985 at the Irish Arts Center in Manhattan. There were 6 performances at the 75-seat theater, and all were by invitation only. No critics were allowed.
We had packed houses every night, but it was controlled. And all of our friends came, and everybody came from Brown, of course, and it was a magical time, it really was. There were people who thought they were coming to see John Kennedy and forgot that it was John and became just involved in the performance. So I really think that his work as an actor transcended the celebrity.
Sachs received multiple offers to do Winners off-Broadway, but she declined, and the play closed as scheduled. John never appeared on stage again.
He had so many interests in his life, and in a sense, I think that acting was too limited for him. It was a part of him, but it couldn't encompass all of him.
Winners marked the end of John's acting career, but it was just the beginning of a romantic relationship between he and co-star Christina Haig.
John and Christina had known each other since they were 15 and were very good friends in college. And so when they became romantically involved, there was a lot of history there and a lot of depth that had already been established.
John was regarded as one of the country's most eligible bachelors, but he preferred steady dating to the swinging singles life.
During his lifetime, this guy never had one of his girlfriends say anything bad about him. Not a single one. And these are people who could have been paid, would have been paid vast sums of money to write a tell-all for a tabloid or a book. And none of them would do it because I think he treated them all so well, even after they broke up.
In July 1986, Christina Haig accompanied John to his sister's wedding, where he served as the best man. 28-year-old Caroline Kennedy married 41-year-old Edwin Schlossberg, a freelance writer and artist. 2 months later, John made a drastic change in his own life. He began law school at New York University.
He went to law school, I think, because he felt like that was closer to representing what was expected of him. And I don't think he was very happy with it.
It wasn't so easy for him to just focus exclusively on being in law school, because there were other demands of his time, real demands and important demands.
John's grade point average did not rank among the top of his class, but his high profile earned him some of the most coveted internships in the country. In the summer of 1988, John received a salary of $1,100 a week to clerk at the prestigious law firm of Manatt, Phelps & Phillips in Los Angeles. Chief Executive Paul Irving supervised the internship program.
I can't tell you that John Kennedy walking around the office was not a special event for us, because it was. He was striking looking. He had a big personality. He invoked secondary meaning for an awful lot of people in the firm, so it was a special thing for all of us.
During his internship, John was given several days off to make his first major public appearance.
There had been a period where he had been sort of off the screen. People hadn't seen him for a while. And then in 1988, he suddenly appeared at the Democratic National Convention to introduce his Uncle Ted.
Over a quarter century ago, my father stood before you to accept the nomination for the presidency of the United States. So many of you came into public service because of him. In a very real sense, because of you, he is with us still.
People were stunned. I mean, here was this person who had grown up, who was articulate. I mean, a lot of people hadn't heard him speak as an adult, and they were surprised at how far he'd come.
Thank you very much.
John received some of the loudest cheers at the convention. The reception fueled speculation that Kennedy was about to follow in his father's footsteps and run for office.
Thank you very much.
Everybody was assuming that this was the debut of his political career, but John was not particularly interested in becoming a politician in the usual sense of the word.
Far in the future, I've just tried to do the things that interest me and do it in my own way, and have managed to consume myself with things other than politics at the moment.
He lived with people's expectations of him, and he really fought to live his own life, to be true to his own path, as opposed to ideas that people imposed upon him.
On almost a daily basis for the rest of his life, John was asked if he had political aspirations.
I think when you know, a public career is it's a lot to bite off, and you better be ready for it, and you better have your life set up for it, and you better be prepared to do it for the long haul. And because that's, you know, the nature of the thing is that you stay in it, and you know, whether it's seniority in the House or the Senate. And I mean, I had some other interests and other sort of things that I was eager to do.
27-year-old John F. Kennedy Jr. was at a crossroads. He was caught between the public pressure of fulfilling his father's legacy and his own ambitions. The young man who desperately wanted to force his own identity had plenty more surprises ahead. Coming up, from the political spotlight to the centerfold.
John Kennedy was our all-time most popular, sexiest man alive.
And later, a frantic search.
By 9 o'clock in the morning, the area is saturated with search rescue units with the sole purpose of finding survivors.
Had John F. Kennedy Jr. ever run for political office, he certainly had the appeal to get elected. In September 1988, 2 months after his rousing speech at the Democratic Convention, 27-year-old John was crowned the sexiest man alive by People magazine. He was the only non-actor ever chosen. Susan Topfer is the executive editor of People.
John Kennedy was our all-time most popular, sexiest man alive. The readers loved him. And there was that wonderful period when he all of a sudden grew out of his awkward years and became an absolutely gorgeous man.
He suddenly emerged as this kind of mature adult to be reckoned with, and I think then the sexiest man alive thing put him into this whole new category of sex symbol where he hadn't been there before. So it did change America's perception of him, and from that point on, I think people paid a lot more attention.
John graced the covers of countless magazines, and he was also a favorite subject of gossip columnists and the tabloids. Much of the media coverage John received concerned his love life. In 1988, the sexiest man alive was still dating Christina Haig, but in the press, he was regarded as an eligible bachelor and was linked to several famous women, including actress Sarah Jessica Parker and the material girl herself, Madonna.
He tried not to take the media attention too seriously. And most importantly, he didn't want that attention to inhibit his ability to live his life. And it was amazing. He was amazing in that way.
The media distractions didn't deter John from his goal of finishing law school. He graduated on schedule in May 1989. His mother was by his side when he received his degree. John accepted a position with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He earned an unprincely sum of $30,000 a year. Former Assistant District Attorney Beth Karras witnessed the hysteria surrounding John's hiring.
Well, as you can imagine, when word spread that JFK Jr. was going to join the DA's office, people were very excited. A lot of anticipation, and when he finally arrived, the television cameras were crowded around, camped out, One Hogan Place, the entrance to the DA's office, and not just for his first day, but for the first weeks. We all were entering the DA's office, having to, part the cameras so we could get in ourselves.
John was assigned to the Special Prosecutions Bureau. He received no extra security and shared a small office with several other first-year assistant district attorneys. Co-workers were offered thousands of dollars to get a single photograph of their famous new colleague.
When your name is John Kennedy and you've got a face like that, it's hard to just blend in. But let me tell you, his mother did a great job raising him, because I think he was a humble individual, at least in my observations of him, in my conversations with him. He was humble, and he never said a thing that couldn't have been repeated.
John's first year on the job was full of challenges. In November 1989, he found out that he flunked the New York bar exam. When he took the test a second time in February 1990, the result was the same. The press had a field day. 2 New York daily newspapers ran the headline, "The Hunk Flunks."
It's terrible enough to flunk, but then to have everyone reading about it and they think it's a reflection of your intelligence, and it's really not. It's what kind of test taker you are.
Obviously, I'm very disappointed again, but you know, God willing, I'll be back there in July, and I'll pass it then, or I'll pass it the next time, or I'll pass it when I'm 95.
With his job and reputation on the line, John finally passed the bar exam on his third try. Manhattan's most talked about assistant district attorney was promptly assigned his first court case, prosecuting the notorious sleeping burglar. On November 1st, 1990, David Ramos allegedly broke into the apartment of schoolteacher Sonia Schwartz and stuffed her jewelry in his pockets. Then, inexplicably, Ramos took a nap on her bed. Ramos was still asleep when a startled Schwartz came home later that afternoon.
About a month later, I got a phone call from the district attorney's office, and the man said to me his name was John Kennedy, that he was an assistant district attorney, and that he was prosecuting the case. And I didn't connect the name with the John Kennedy, but then I decided to ask him a question. I said, "Are you the John Kennedy of the Kennedy clan?" And before I finished my question, he said, "Yes." He said it very, very quickly.
They gave him a rock-solid case. You're talking about a burglar who goes in and steals someone's possessions, puts them in his pockets, and then falls asleep on her bed. If you can't win that one, I mean, you should be a trial lawyer.
In August 1991, before a packed courthouse, John was visibly relieved when the jury delivered a guilty verdict.
It was like the beginning of something, a horror story in my life that ended up with this unusual event of meeting this grandiose individual.
John's legal victory drew widespread attention, but his social life still dominated the headlines. In 1991, John ended his 6-year relationship with Christina Haig and was now romantically linked to actress Daryl Hannah. 30-year-old Hannah starred in the 1984 hit movie Splash and later appeared in such popular films as Wall Street and Steel Magnolias. The Kennedy men had long been associated with famous actresses. Joe Sr. had an affair with Gloria Swanson, and reportedly, Jack and Robert Kennedy each had sexual flings with Marilyn Monroe. Jackie tried to steer her son away from that family tradition.
She had opinions about all of his girlfriends. From what I understand, Jackie liked Daryl Hannah very much, but I don't think she felt that that was the woman for him, and she let him know it.
Despite his mother's objections, John moved into Daryl's New York City apartment in 1993. John and Daryl were the hottest couple in town, and the press stalked their every move. The nonstop attention often created friction between the two.
When I first met her and spent time around them, I told them both that I liked both of them better when they weren't in one another's company. I didn't think that they brought out the best in each other.
In the fall of 1993, John's attention shifted from his volatile relationship with Daryl Hannah to his mother. That October, Jackie was taken to the hospital after a horseback riding accident left her unconscious for half an hour. Doctors discovered a more serious problem, however. Jackie had swollen lymph nodes. Her condition soon worsened.
She went to see a doctor and they did biopsies and they discovered that she had non-Hodgkin's disease lymphoma, a very dangerous form of cancer.
Jackie underwent an aggressive regimen of radiation and chemotherapy. The treatments didn't work, though, and by the spring of 1994, Jackie's cancer spread. Determined to fight to the end, she allowed her doctor to perform an experimental surgery.
The only way that could be counteracted would be if he drilled a shunt in her skull and fed the chemotherapy directly into the brain and combined that with radiation. She did that, but it didn't work.
On May 19, 1994, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis lost her battle with cancer. She was 64. John was at his mother's side when she passed away.
John Kennedy Jr. went downstairs in front of her apartment building at 1040 Fifth Avenue. And there were thousands of people outside and cameras from the television studios. And it was a huge scene.
My mother passed on. She was surrounded by her friends and her family and her books. And the people and the things that she loved, and she did it in her own way and on her own terms.
3 days later, Jackie was laid to rest beside John F. Kennedy at Arlington National Cemetery.
We which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord.
I talked to him right after she died, and he said that he felt like nobody became a grown-up until both of their parents were dead.
In the months following his mother's death, John ended his up-and-down relationship with Daryl Hannah and resigned from the New York City District Attorney's Office. At the age of 33, John F. Kennedy Jr. was determined to begin yet another chapter in his life. Coming up, John picks his princess.
She was the first woman he'd ever met who really played kind of hard to get, and he had to pursue her.
And then takes to the skies.
And I was a little nervous about it because John had a kind of raw determination to go on no matter what, which can be a dangerous quality in a pilot.
Even though they often disagreed with each other, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis had always been the driving force in John Jr.'s life. In 1994, when she lost her battle with cancer, 33-year-old John was devastated. The memories of his mother were so painful that John sold the New York City apartment where she raised him. To deal with his grief, John leaned on the new woman in his life.
I don't think it's any accident that Carolyn Bessette was very much like Jackie in some ways, and she had this aloof quality, and I think that's what appealed to John about her, in that she was the first woman he'd ever met who really played kind of hard to get, and he had to pursue her.
John met 27-year-old Carolyn Bessette in October 1993. Bessette worked in public relations for fashion designer Calvin Klein.
Did the hair and makeup people come? Hair came. Hair came.
From their cars. That's cool, honey. Don't worry about it. That's fine.
Among her many job responsibilities, Bessette shopped for the company's celebrity clients. After she sold John 3 business suits, the two exchanged phone numbers and were soon spotted together around town. Their relationship heated up when John broke up with Daryl Hannah in the summer of 1994.
If you extracted all of the qualities of the women that I saw John with and created some kind of essence of what they had in common, I would say that Carolyn was that essence.
Carolyn Bessette was born in 1966 and grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. In her 1983 high school yearbook, she was voted the ultimate beautiful person of her senior class. 5 years later, she graduated from Boston University with a degree in elementary education. But Carolyn had her sights set on a far more glamorous career. In 1990, she tried her hand at modeling, posing for a series of jean ads. The following year, she was hired as a sales clerk at a Calvin Klein store in Boston. A corporate executive, impressed by Carolyn's sophisticated looks, recruited her to New York City. John was equally charmed by Bessette. In April 1995, after less than a year of dating, John asked Carolyn to move in with him.
She could rivet somebody's attention more completely than anybody I'd ever met, with the exception of John's mother. She just had that gift of being endlessly interesting.
During this period, John's professional life also went through changes. In 1994, he decided to leave the district attorney's office. His first project put him in front of a television camera as the host of a new PBS series.
Welcome to Heart of the City. I'm John Kennedy. Clean air, less traffic, adequate housing. Those are the things a lot of New Yorkers only dream about.
John's participation on the Heart of the City series triggered a flood of television offers. But John had a far different and unexpected career choice in mind. In the fall of 1994, Kennedy approached friend Robin Sachs with his idea.
We had dinner one night, pretty close to the time that he came up with the concept for George. And he told me of his idea and his plan, and then what the name would be. And I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was really the right direction for him to go.
John secured $20 million from French publishing company Hachette Philippaki to start George. Although he had no journalism experience, John took on the title of editor-in-chief.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet George. George just doesn't cover politics, it celebrates it. We will celebrate it.
George hit newsstands in October 1995. To promote his venture, the usually private John F. Kennedy Jr. went on a publicity tour. Predictably, most of the interview questions were of a personal nature.
I mean, when you go out, people follow you, right? I mean, you don't have a normal life.
I have a pretty normal life, surprisingly. I mean, you know, every now and then sort of strange things happen. But, I mean, up until the cavalcade of publicity for George, I was a private citizen.
Inside the New York offices of George, John was adamant that his personal life remained private. Employees were required to sign confidentiality agreements forbidding them from talking to the press about their boss. Richard Blow was a senior editor at George, and his office was next to John's.
John, at the beginning, was anxious about the idea of being a celebrity and going to the office every day with a bunch of journalists. I mean, John Kennedy did not hang out with journalists before starting George Magazine. And I think he was understandably concerned about going to work with all these people he'd never met before.
While John demanded privacy, he was also a hands-on editor who often worked late into the night. He approved story ideas, edited copy, wrote a column, and interviewed a wide range of notable politicians. One of John's interviews was with former Colorado Senator and ex-presidential candidate Gary Hart.
He showed up in our office here in Denver all by himself, a little tape recorder, and I think people who saw him in the elevators were stunned because it was clear who he was. There is something in the American people that think if you're famous or a celebrity that you're constantly surrounded by a group. And here was John Kennedy Jr. on an elevator going up in an office building nearby here in Denver, being polite and smiling. I think we heard about it for weeks thereafter.
John's celebrity status drew interest and made George an initial success. The first few issues each sold more than 500,000 copies and contained more than 100 pages of advertising. Impressive numbers for a new magazine.
Clearly the magazine is going to get attention because of John. How do you redirect that to get people to pay attention to the magazine rather than just saying, hey George, that's where John Kennedy works. Who's he going out with now?
As hard as John tried to be taken seriously as a journalist, it was his personal life that continued to dominate headlines. Everywhere John went with Carolyn Bessette, they were hounded by questions about their future plans.
Before he got married, there was this feeling that something was happening, and it was probably going to be John's marriage.
John and Carolyn kept mum on the subject, at least publicly, but privately they agreed to marry. By the summer of 1996, the two concocted a plan for a completely private wedding. Only 40 guests were invited to the secret ceremony, and none of them knew the exact location until they arrived.
It was a great practical joke, if nothing else, that he was able to get 40 of us onto this island off the coast of Georgia. That was a burning secret. It was really hard not to tell somebody.
On September 21st, 1996, inside the tiny First African Baptist Church on the remote Cumberland Island, 30-year-old Carolyn Bessette and 35-year-old John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. were married. The newlyweds immediately left on a honeymoon to Turkey. When they returned home 2 weeks later, the press had staked out their apartment building.
She was this vibrant, lively, beautiful girl, and after she married John, the publicity changed her completely. She was completely altered by this business of being in the spotlight. She wasn't prepared to have people camping on their doorstep and leaping out from behind bushes to take her picture.
Carolyn's aversion to the press is graphically shown in this video taken in 1996. While Carolyn, John, and two friends waited for their car, photographers surrounded them. As was often the case, Carolyn couldn't bear to show her face.
The difference is that Carolyn wasn't born into this. Carolyn made a choice to join it because she loved John, but at the same time, she wasn't used to it.
I think the greatest weakness of their marriage was external. She just had a really difficult time being turned into a thing by the press. And she had been turned into a thing. And not a particularly likable thing either.
The intrusive press put John and Carolyn's young marriage to the test. Months after returning from their honeymoon, the couple began having problems.
Like a lot of intense relationships, I think they could barely stand to be together at times, and they knew that they couldn't stand to be apart. It was a great love story, but most great love stories have a tragic undercurrent, and this one did too.
The complete lack of privacy wasn't the only thing Carolyn was unhappy about. In the weeks leading up to his wedding, John began to pursue his longtime interest in flying. Jackie had always discouraged her son from flying out of fear for his safety. Carolyn told friends that she was equally terrified. In August 1996, John purchased his first ultralight, an odd-looking contraption called a Buckeye-powered parachute.
I just could not believe that he was up there, just a speck against the sky in this, what amounted to a snowmobile with a propeller and a parachute for a wing. I mean, it just seemed like an insane thing.
Insane or not, John was hooked. In December 1997, he enrolled in flight school and earned his pilot's license in just 4 months. In April 1998, John purchased his first airplane, a 4-seat Cessna 182.
I was a little nervous about it because John could be distracted, and he also had a kind of raw determination to go on no matter what, which can be a dangerous quality in a pilot.
John soon became a regular fixture at Essex County Airport in Fairfield, New Jersey, where he stored his plane. During the summer of 1998, John flew to Martha's Vineyard nearly every weekend. He eventually started using his plane for business travel as well.
If you ever flew on a plane with John, you would understand why he wanted to fly. I mean, going to airports, sitting on a plane, this was a very public gauntlet. You're really exposed. And often John would, board a plane at one airport, and by the time he got off at the other airport, there'd be a bunch of photographers waiting for him.
By 1999, 38-year-old John logged about 200 hours of flight time, but he was still considered a novice pilot. That didn't stop him, though, from eyeing his next bigger and faster airplane. Coming up, John's final flight.
Visibility was poor, and especially when you're going over the ocean.
It was probably completely out of control 15 seconds before they hit the water.
38-year-old John F. Kennedy Jr. faced many challenges as 1999 got underway. His 2.5-year marriage to 33-year-old Carolyn Bessette was strained as a result of the non-stop media coverage. And the luster surrounding George had also worn off. In its 3rd year of publication, the magazine was losing an estimated $1 million a month. There was one place John could escape his problems: in the air. In April 1999, he purchased a new plane, a Piper Saratoga II, from New Jersey businessman Munir Hussain.
Saratoga is a high performance and complex plane because its gears goes up, speed is a little faster, and it was more powerful than his old plane, and a lot more instruments in there.
John's wife Carolyn was concerned about the sophisticated new aircraft. John was still a relatively inexperienced pilot. He wasn't instrument trained and often flew with an instructor at night and in bad weather. Carolyn's fears were further realized Memorial Day weekend. John crashed his other aircraft, an ultralight, on the beach in Martha's Vineyard and broke his left ankle.
I saw him take a couple landings in that it was a wonder to me that he survived those. So he had kind of the ability to get kind of on the edge with it.
John returned to New York City hobbling on crutches, his ankle in a cast. The accident didn't discourage him from flying, though. On Monday, July 12th, John flew with an instructor to Toronto to meet with potential new investors for George.
Those of us who saw him knew that flying was something he took very seriously and was quite diligent about studying, training for. And it was disturbing to see or hear any suggestion that John was not a serious pilot, that he was not safety conscious or cautious. He was.
On Wednesday, July 14th, 2 days after he returned from Toronto, John met his wife and sister-in-law, Lauren Bessette, for lunch at the posh Stanhope Hotel. The three finalized plans for the upcoming weekend. Lauren wanted to visit friends on Martha's Vineyard. John and Carolyn were committed to attend the wedding of John's younger cousin, Rory Kennedy. The wedding was to be held at the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport. John volunteered to fly. His cast was being removed the next day, and the flight would be his first without an instructor since he broke his ankle. Carolyn, who often had been reluctant to fly with John in the past, agreed to the plan. On Friday, July 16th, John's cast was off, but he was still limping when he met George editor Richard Blow for lunch.
We had a really nice, casual, terrific lunch. It was a Friday, so we were both feeling kind of relaxed.
Following lunch, John returned to work to tie up loose ends before leaving for the weekend. He made sure to respond to an email from close friend John Perry Barlow, whose mother had passed away a couple of days earlier.
The last thing he did before leaving the office, the day that he went down, was to write me a message back saying that he was sorry to hear about my mother's death, but he had been with his mother when she went, and he was glad that I'd had that experience. And that was the last I ever heard from him. He sent that about 5 o'clock.
Lauren Bessette arrived at John's office at approximately 6:30 p.m. The two agreed to carpool to Essex County Airport in New Jersey, where John parked his plane. Carolyn was going to take a limousine service and meet them there. Traffic out of Manhattan was unusually heavy. John and Lauren didn't pull into the airport parking lot until almost 8 o'clock, 45 minutes later than they anticipated. Carolyn arrived a few minutes earlier. Pilot Kyle Bailey was also at the airport. He had canceled plans to fly to Martha's Vineyard minutes before he saw John warming up his plane.
Every time I've seen him in that airplane, he had an instructor with him. He had an airplane prior to that, a Cessna 182, and I would often see him flying that solo or with his wife and also with his dog. But that particular airplane, the Piper Saratoga, that was the first time I ever saw him get into the airplane by himself.
Munir Hussain landed at Essex Airport shortly before John took off.
I asked one of my friends, he said, is John flying today? And he said, yes, John is flying. And I said, but weather is really bad up there. And we both thought, just automatically, he's flying with instructor.
Actually, an instructor offered that night to fly with him at the last minute, and he said no, he just wanted to do it himself.
At 8:38, the sun had set and the sky was hazy when John taxied his Piper Saratoga out to the runway. Carolyn and her sister Lauren sat in the back, their seats directly behind John.
I saw the plane take off from runway 22, and the airplane made about 3 right turns, exited the airport traffic pattern, and proceeded towards the northeast direction towards Long Island Sound.
John took his usual route up the Connecticut coast, using the city lights along the way to guide him. When he reached the town of Westerly, Rhode Island, John opted to break from the coastline and take the fastest shot to the vineyard. He veered the plane right over the Atlantic Ocean. He was but 38 miles from the Martha's Vineyard Airport. Over the ocean, the haze turned into a heavy fog. Since John was not instrument trained, he depended on the horizon to guide his way.
Visibility was poor, and especially when you're going over the ocean. Okay, now top and bottom almost the same, and visibility is less. You have no horizon, no nothing. You have no landmark. And once you in that window and you're not instrument rated, you're really going to get disoriented because you have nothing to follow now.
At 9:33, 55 minutes after takeoff, John's small aircraft began to lose altitude.
Doing the right thing under those conditions runs directly counter to your intuition. You want to look for the horizon if you can't see it. And when you look at the instruments under those conditions, they don't make any sense to you at all, because your body's telling you something different.
Your first instinct would be to pull back on the control column, to raise the nose and climb. But in the graveyard spiral, since you're actually in a turn, when you pull back on the controls, it will actually tighten the spiral and make it worse.
At 9:41, 8 minutes after John first experienced altitude trouble, his plane disappeared from radar.
It was probably completely out of control 15 seconds before they hit the water. I mean, that if he'd tried at that point to really regain control of the aircraft, it would have torn itself apart. So he didn't have a lot of time to figure it out.
When the plane failed to arrive at Martha's Vineyard in Hyannisport, family and friends began to worry. At 1:55 Saturday morning, the Coast Guard station in nearby Woods Hole, Massachusetts, received an urgent call from family friend Carol Radziwill, who was at the Kennedy compound. Captain Russell Webster immediately organized an extensive search.
The initial focus was a 100-mile stretch from the eastern shore of Long Island Sound up to Martha's Vineyard. Planes were launched nearly immediately and began searching by air.
As the rescue attempt got underway, President Bill Clinton was awakened by aides and apprised of the situation. At 4 a.m., Richard and Ann Freeman, the stepfather and mother of Carolyn and Lauren Bessette, were alerted that their daughters were missing. John's sister, Caroline Kennedy Schlossberg, was on vacation in Idaho to celebrate her 13th wedding anniversary when she was told the news. As daylight broke, the Coast Guard deployed a small armada of boats and planes in the massive search effort.
By 9 o'clock in the morning, the area is virtually saturated with search rescue units with the sole purpose of finding survivors.
At the Kennedy compound, Rory Kennedy's wedding was put on hold. The family held a vigil while they waited for updates. By now, news of John's missing plane was all over the television airwaves.
Again, I think we should keep our thoughts with the families as events unfold, and my thoughts and prayers are with them.
There was a fleeting moment where I thought that he'd actually decided to make good on his occasional threat to simply disappear, get some plastic surgery, and lead a normal life.
In my mind was coming a lot of things because I don't want him to die. And I was thinking, maybe he landed somewhere else. Maybe he saw weather is bad there and he gone somewhere else and he didn't report.
In front of John and Carolyn's Manhattan apartment building, well-wishers constructed a makeshift shrine of flowers, candles, and cards. By Saturday afternoon, hope began to fade.
There was a headrest that came ashore. There was personal luggage. There was materials from the inside of the plane. And unfortunately, all of the materials, including the earliest discovered materials, were accordioned as a result of a crash.
By Sunday afternoon, one day after John's plane was first reported missing, the Coast Guard switched its operation from search and rescue to search and recovery. The flags at the Kennedy compound were lowered to half-staff. Ted Kennedy, John's uncle, issued a short press release addressing the family's unspeakable grief.
I just tried to figure out a scenario that would result in John and Carolyn and Lauren being alive. And as hard as I tried, I couldn't come up with one. At least not one that made any sense.
Coming up, farewell to America's Prince.
He'll never have so many things that he should have had, so many experiences.
I keep trying to tell myself that I shouldn't be so bereft because I was incredibly fortunate to have him as long as I did.
As the world watched and waited, the search for John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn and Lauren Bessette continued. On Wednesday, July 21st, 1999, 5 days after the three disappeared, their aircraft was found 7 miles off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Divers discovered the Piper Saratoga lying upside down 120 feet below the ocean's surface. The victims were still strapped in their seats. Ted Kennedy was immediately taken to the crash site.
3 victims were raised in a specially constructed cage and brought up to the surface, transferred to a Coast Guard 55-foot buoy tender along with the senator and other family members, and brought here into Woods Hole about 6 p.m. that night.
Several hours later, at the request of both families, all 3 bodies were cremated.
Thursday morning, about 9 o'clock, the family came down with the cremated remains, and the Navy senior chaplain met the family, and the family was put on board the Coast Guard cutter Santabella, brought out to the USS Briscoe, and the family went up, and the Briscoe, with Coast Guard and Massachusetts Environmental Police escorts, transited out near the crash site.
John, Carolyn, and Lauren's ashes were scattered at sea in a private ceremony attended by close family members. The following day, on Friday, July 23rd, more than 300 mourners, including First Lady Hillary Clinton and President Bill Clinton, attended a memorial service for John and Carolyn in New York City. Ted Kennedy gave a touching eulogy. About John, he said, quote, "Like his father, he had every gift but length of years."
The time that we spent with John and the time that we were all together was just one of the most joyous times in all our lives, and it's sad that he's not around. It really is.
In the months following the accident, an autopsy revealed that John had no alcohol or drugs in his system the night his plane went down. The National Transportation Safety Board concluded the crash was caused by John's failure to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night, which was a result of spatial disorientation.
I think that had he been using an autopilot, he might have been all right. Had he had more time in the aircraft, he might have been all right. Had he started a little earlier, he might have been all right. There are many things that you can say like that, but the fact is that all those negatives added up to one great big negative.
At the time of his death, 38-year-old John was worth an estimated $100 million. In John's will, Carolyn was to receive the bulk of her husband's estate if she was still alive 30 days after his death. Since Carolyn died at the same time, most of John's money went to his sister, Carolyn Kennedy Schlossberg, and her 3 children. Understandably grief-stricken over the loss of her 2 daughters, Anne Freeman filed a court motion in the year 2000 that left the door open for a possible wrongful death suit. A year later, in July 2001, Freeman and her family reportedly reached an out-of-court settlement with the Kennedys for $15 million. In January 2001, the publisher of George announced the magazine was ceasing publication for financial reasons. The final issue was released that March, the only one to ever feature John on the cover.
My office was next to John's. I wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to him every day. And for some reason that day I didn't. I don't know why. He might have been on the phone, but I never got to say goodbye to John. And I will always regret that.
For the family and friends of John F. Kennedy Jr., his death meant the loss of their prince, the Prince of Camelot.
He gave you that feeling that time was short and fleeting, and put as much into a day as possible, and if it meant going a little faster and a little bit higher into that dark night, you do it.
People who were close to John always felt this protectiveness about him, because There was a vulnerability about him. When you experienced that vulnerability, you wanted to protect it.
I keep trying to tell myself that I shouldn't be so bereft because I was incredibly fortunate to have him as long as I did. And sometimes that works. But I sure do miss him.
Make up a good one. You can do this. Just please stay off of here, okay? I apologize for pouring water on your camera. If you tell me how much, you know how much it is? What's he doing? What do you think he's doing? Here he is. Kiss. You guys are unbelievable.